The sea and the sky. The legendary Vesterhiva lighthouse. Dikes dotted with flocks of sheep. Vast meadows in a seemingly endless countryside. In Vesterhiva, a small village in North Germany, we meet the artist Monika Nelting. The painter who lives in Hamburg spends spring to autumn each year on the North Sea coast. The sea is only a few kilometres away from her studio and home. Tiny roads lead the nature-loving artist to the beach. The colour blue, says Monika Nelting, suffuses the landscape all around me. The sea, the sky, the clouds and the horizon. But beyond that, blue also symbolises all of this. Monika Nelting seeks encounters with the sea, the elements and the primal forces of nature. But she's not an open-air painter. Setting up her easel in the countryside just isn't enough for her. Her paintings begin to emerge right here where they originate. The bare canvas touches the seabed underwater. The artist unfolds the canvas, presses it into the mudflats with her feet, folds, flexes and moulds it with her bare hands. Sand, water, wind and sun all affect her actions. The language of the elements and Monika Nelting's work fuse together and become one, spiritually and literally. I deliberately try, says Monika Nelting, to make room for the subconscious. I give myself over to my actions. I expose myself to the play of the sea and the wind. All of my perceptions are equally important. The sun, the light, cold or warmth. The sky, the clouds and the colours. The wind, the smell of the sea and the screeching of the gulls. I try to include everything that is there. Water, sand, mud, shellfish, algae. I want, says the artist, to encounter all these elements by approaching them and blending in with their motion. Basically, that is Monika Nelting's concept, blue idea. She doesn't want the elements merely to leave an impression on the canvas. She wants to capture her experiences and take them back to the studio, where they become an integral part of the painting process. So, at the beginning of every painting, there is a holistic process combining the physical and the spiritual, a performance in the mudflats which is never the same. Monika Nelting simply spreads the canvas out on the lawn to dry. The language of nature and the artist's actions have left their mark. In the summer, Monika Nelting opens her house to the public for 1 month. She calls this her summer studio. The studio lies at a distance from Vesterhiva and is idyllically situated on a small mound. Art lovers, tourists and locals can drop in and visit the artist in her summer studio, contemplate her works and have a look around. The building, a former farmhouse, is almost 400 years old. The so-called Haubarg is a typical example of regional North German architecture. Today, the Haubarg houses the home, the studio and the exhibition room. Monika Nelting has converted the loft, where hay used to be stored, into a room to hang her paintings. The artist always shows her guests around the summer studio herself. She's only too glad to describe her artistic concept, Blue Idea, explain the way she works and discuss her paintings. The multifaceted significance of the colour blue, the colour of the sea and the sky, the colour with so many emotional associations. The workshop and the studio are on the ground floor of what used to be the cowshed. Ultramarine. The artist mixes her own paint from pigments. Blue, says Monika Nelting, is the colour of distance, of longing, transcendence, freedom, truth and the divine. But blue is also the colour of the demonic, of night, dreams and the incalculable. I find these contrasts fascinating. Water, with its symbolic significance, plays a central role in all Monika Nelting's paintings. It begins when the canvas encounters the mudflats and continues in the studio. At this stage, the artist uses wax. Poured onto the canvas or applied in several layers, wax is visually reminiscent of water with its variously structured surfaces, sometimes appearing transparent like a film of shallow water, sometimes milky and cloudy like ice. Liquid wax finds its own way across the colours. The artist uses a paintbrush to apply wax to specific areas of the canvas. Wax is also instrumental in dispersing the fine sand from the mudflats. The multitude of impressions I'm exposed to out on the mudflats are physical rather than conscious sensations, says Monika Nelting. The experience is revived once more in the studio and through the strokes of the brush becomes part of the painting. Ultramarine, cobalt blue, indigo, Prussian blue. By using the entire range of blue pigments and adding titanium white, she creates all the shades of blue in any degree of intensity or transparency she needs. I keep working on the canvas, says the artist, until the canvas and I arrive at a common language. Blue is a colour of many meanings. Blue is a colour of opposites, polarities. That's what I mean by blue idea, and that's what interests me. Energies which, when they work against each other, can be radical, aggressive and destructive, and forces which, when joined together, can have a positive, harmonious, synergetic effect. In her work, the artist explores the concept of blue in all its various shades and characteristics. Monika Nelting has chosen the landscape of the North Sea because from here she can put across her artistic and philosophic ideas in conjunction with the power of the elements. In the hayloft above the cowshed, she has created a light-flooded exhibition area to display her paintings. This versatile artist uses a large format camera to record her works for the next catalogue. This painting is entitled Blue Idea, the Year of the Dragon. Monika Nelting's paintings do not portray the landscape. She does not show us familiar objects, nor are the forces of nature, the violence of the sea, or the power of storms her concrete themes. Blue is not simply the blue of the vast sky spanning Vesterhavet, just as the flowing line does not correspond to the water on the mudflats, although the paintings originate there. Her works are the creative expression of abstract atmospheres, an abstract echo of the elements air, water, earth, and light. For Monika Nelting, blue signifies the simultaneous suspension of the conscious and the subconscious, opposite poles which are nonetheless eternally linked. Deep shades of blue, over and over again. Blue idea, the blood of the earth. In this work, the water-sand patterns from the mudflats are no longer visible. They've been totally submerged below countless layers of paint and wax, and yet the original impression of the elements can still be felt. Red idea, blue idea. Ideas on balance. In a comprehensive catalogue, Monika Nelting shows examples of her artistic work on the potential of the polarities red and blue. The horizon has special significance for Monika Nelting. In her work, horizons are formed by lines, even if they are not horizontal but may be vertical or diagonal. The line of the horizon, says the artist, is not just a border but acts as a mediator between the sea and the sky, just like the transition from the conscious to the subconscious. Water symbolizing the subconscious, depth and darkness, and the sky symbolizing awareness, lucidity and brightness. The horizon between them is sometimes a bold line and sometimes cloudy and indistinct. The observer will discover tiny stones and seashells or sand and remnants of plants in some works, objects found on the mudflats. Like Monika Nelting's artistic actions, these details also form a link with the impressions from the mudflats and have their own symbolic significance. After its treatment on the mudflats, the canvas has now been dried in the wind and sun. Monika Nelting is assisted by her husband J.O.E. A new painting can now emerge. The canvas still smells of salt, sea and seaweed, but this disappears when the artist applies a fixative to retain the traces of her performance activities in the mudflats. A view from the summer studio. In the intervals between working, Monika Nelting searches the farm for materials she can use in her paintings. Storms, ice and rain have eaten away at the corrugated iron barn. The small mound with its old brick farmhouse, which has defied the elements for hundreds of years, is a mythical and inspiring location for the artist, ideally suited for the realization of her creative projects. In Blue Idea, Aspects of Living, one of her most recent works, Monika Nelting incorporates wafer-thin, weather-beaten fragments of iron. In her smaller graphic works, the artist captures unexpected gestures of nature in equally sudden and spontaneous brushstrokes, rhythmic waves over the rippled mudflats, sparkles of light on the shifting water, eddies of wind gusting across the endless flat meadows. With a highly personal style and her specific techniques, Monika Nelting's paintings contain archetypal structures and shapes which touch us deeply and remind us that there is more to reality than we can experience through our five senses. Monika Nelting could be defined as a painter who gives expression to the language of the sea, with all its levels of meaning.